Hello everyone, my name is Devanshu Sharma and I have recently passed my USMLE Step 1 in my third year. Today's video is regarding understanding Uworld and figuring out whether to use it as a learning tool or an assessment resource. We'll also dwell upon certain techniques to annotate Uworld information quickly and efficiently. Regarding the fact that whether you use Uworld as a learning tool or an assessment tool, my argument is that, well, if you can use it both ways at the same time, why do you want to choose one? Yes, you can use Uworld both as a learning tool and an assessment tool at the same time by just a few modifications and by just strengthening your core concepts on first aid. Well, the simple logic is that if you have a good hold of your first aid and the light resources, and you have done enough number of questions before attempting your first pass, it's very likely that you would make most of the questions right on your first pass, right? And if you're able to solve most of the question bank correctly on the first go, that way you are converting Uworld, which is basically a learning tool, into an assessment resource as well. And now what's the advantage? The advantage is that you are efficiently just shortening the total USMLE Step 1 prep time, because you are just making most of the questions correct on your first pass, so you do not need to spend that much of time on your second pass, and consequently your total time just gets shortened and you get more and more confident regarding your preparation. So yes, you need to score high on your first pass to convert UWorld into an assessment resource, like I said. And to score high, be really thorough with your first aid concepts and solve a cubing prior to attempting first pass. I have a detailed video regarding first aid and its allied resources, and I have shared the link in the description box. You can check it out from there. Which is a good Q bank to solve? USMLE RX, which is given by the first aid people only, is a pretty good Q bank to start with. The reason is that the annotations offered by the book are very good, and they just help you to revise and review a question in a very simple way. They have first aid pages as their review resource, and basically what happens is when you are just solving a question on USMLE RX and when you basically revise it, during revision you will find first aid pages attached with the question itself. So let's say if you make a question wrong, you already know from which page was this question framed, and if the question is multidisciplinary or if it's interlinked, you will find all the pages attached in the question in the question review stem, and that way you would be able to just understand which are your weak concepts on first aid and which are your strong concepts on first aid. So that just helps you to phase out and split the learning process, and it helps you to revise first aid much more quickly and efficiently. That way you retain the information really effectively. At the end you'll just remember the cases. Nobody remembers complete first aid. Everybody who crack USMLE Step 1, they just remember the patterns, the basic patterns through which the questions are framed, right? During your UWorld first pass, always remember that you need to prefer doing UWorld first pass on a tutor mode. Never ever time yourself while doing first pass. UWorld first pass, you need to use it to learn as much as you can and spend as much time as possible. How much time you need, just give that time to a particular question and gain the maximum out of it. Never ever rush on step 1. Step 1, you will cube and first pass, right? And how do you do that? You basically solve one block, which is 40 questions per day, and you review it. The total time that would be elapsed this way, it would be around 6 hours to 8 hours, depending upon your efficiency and speed. And if you do the same thing over and over again, like wake up and solve a block, review it, and do it the same thing the next day for about 3.5 to 4 months, you would be able to finish the Q bank in a very, very, very effective manner. And you would be able to score really high too if you have a good hold of your first aid. Around 75 to 80% on UWorld first pass is really good. And if you're able to get that much of score, you really do not need to do your UWorld second pass completely. Do it partially, do it on random mode, and switch to your NBMEs. My UWorld first step, the first pass score was like around 80%, and I finished it in 3.5 months. And it took me another 1 month to do UWorld second pass, and I did it around like 35 to 40%. So yeah, these are the basic things that you need to keep in mind. And now we would just switch on to some basic annotation techniques and how do you write the information given in UWorld, and how do you retain it in an efficient manner? Now, regarding the annotations part, well, here are my strategies. I did not use any separate material to annotate my UWorld information. I annotated UWorld perfectly well in my first aid textbook. Please prefer offline annotations because that way you would be able to concise the information at a single place. At the end, you'll have to revise and re-revise your first aid only. So it's very important to put in as much information as possible into the book so that you can later recall it in an efficient manner. For important tables and theoretical content, I would suggest that draw those tables directly into your first aid. I have a few images. I'll show you how did I annotate it. And please make note of the fact that you do not need to annotate everything given in UWorld in your textbook. What you should do is that whenever you encounter a question, let's say you did it right or maybe you did it wrong, you read through the explanations and first of all link the information with what you already know. Try to derive as much information as possible, and whatever you are able to derive, do not annotate it. Be confident that if you have been able to derive it once, you would be able to derive it again. So try to link as much information as possible. What you cannot derive, that's what you should actually put in your in your first aid textbook. And if you do it that way, you'll actually find out that there is pretty much very less information overall that you need to enter in your first aid. There would be some new drugs, maybe some new mechanism of actions, some straight recall facts, and that's it. Most of the pathophysiology is heavily linked to your basic pathology and your physiology, so you do not need to annotate that in your UOL. You need to just make sense of those things in your own mind. So the more you practice, you would understand that those annotations actually did not make any sense because they were heavily linked, and you would be able to solve them later without even annotating that information in your book. Regarding the images and basic radiological CT scans and MRIs, I went for online annotations. I created separate notebooks in my UWorld database, and I just saved all those images. So before reviewing the system, I would just revise those images once and read the concept through my first using my first aid textbook. I did not use any flashcards. Some people also prefer the Anki deck, but I did not use it. And if it's useful to you, please go ahead and let me know in the comment section how did you like it and what was your experience. Only annotate straight facts and what's not obvious. Like I just told you this. Do not just, if you encounter a question, do not just start writing all the information in your textbook. No, no, no. First of all, take a step back, understand the question, read through the information. Please understand what is obvious and what is and what are the things that just make sense to you. You would actually, for every question, you would be able to figure out that yes, this was the place where I lost the question. The questions given in UWorld are all through or all are all solved basically through a stepwise approach. First of all, you make the diagnosis, then maybe they would ask you about a drug or maybe the relevant microbiology, or maybe they would ask you about the pathophysiology. So let's say you made a diagnosis wrong. That's when you need to write the whole question. If you just if you could eliminate three options and just two were left, then you need to understand that yes, here was the point where I lost the question, and this is the extra point that I need to know. So like there are certain concepts regarding, let's say, obstructive sleep apnea has some good annotations, pulmonary embolism has some good annotations, cardiac tamponade has some good annotations. But yes, you need not annotate everything in your first aid textbook. First of all, make sense of the question, link it in your mind, and then just write down the important information and the facts that you were not able to link with your existing knowledge. Create as much summary diagrams as possible. I would show you this to you in my next slide. Summary diagrams are basically that if you read a first aid page, let's say you read the section of esophagus or maybe you read the section of stomach, you just make the whole diagram of GIT and you annotate all the pathogenesis on that single diagram of stomach. Go do this for UWorld as well. Try not to write the information given in UWorld. Try to understand the information through a diagrammatic approach. Let's say if you have three lines in UWorld which you're not able to understand, try to make a diagram or a visual mnemonic for that and just draw that on the sides of your first aid textbook. That way you would be able to recall the information much better. You may use color coding. Some people use it. They use different colors for physiology, pharmacology, or maybe pathology integration, but I did not use it. Use it if you wish to. So yeah, these are my first aid annotations. I did not write what is super obvious. Well, and there are some questions when in which you are able to make three of the four steps correctly, and at the last step, while the signal question, you get stuck. So yeah, there are some places where I've written that one single extra point to solve the entire question. I prefer making a lot of visual diagrams. I prefer concising the information as much as possible on a single diagram, and that's what you can see here. There are a lot of pages that I have attached, and the highest yield points I feel like I should highlight it. Yes, for highlighter there is no specific color coding. I just want to give it an aesthetic look, and I just want to look at visually appealing so that I can revise it again and again. Regarding the CVS annotations, I would like to say you one thing that regarding when it comes to Frank Starling curves, do not try to cram them. Try to just extrapolate them in your own words, and that's what you can see here at the bottom side. I have just added an extra page from this is basically from Kaplan and Uworld together, regarding the Frank Starling laws. And yeah, this is pretty much how do you have to annotate Uworld in your first step. The next video, I would be solving a sample question for you, and I would be telling you how do you actually dissect a question, and how do you scrutinize information from the review stem, and how do you figure out what to write and what not to write. So stay tuned, like, share, and subscribe. Thanks a lot.